Hello, and welcome to Take Back Time. My name is Penny Zinker, and I'm your host. And on this show, we are hosting the greatest minds, the biggest geeks, the people who really love productivity and want to share it with you so that you can help to take back time. And today is a perfect show to help you take back time because we're going to talk about keeping things simple. Less is more, right? So we've heard that, but somehow we make things more complex than they need to be. So Scott Friesen is here with us today, and he is the simplest specialist, and he helps people from all over the world to improve their productivity. His time management techniques have benefited thousands of individuals and organizations alike. And managing email overload, never-ending to-do list, and today's technological distractions are among Scott's specialities and his favorites. His experience in the technology industry has led him to be one of the most foremost authorities on productivity applications. I'm sure we'll hear more about that too. And through speeches and courses and workshops, Scott provides powerful tools for those who want more out of their day. He's really dedicated his life to helping others to focus on what's important and to do it with less stress. And that is really key because he says being too busy isn't productive. So Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Penny. So glad to be here.
So, tell me, you have this brand, Simpletivity. So tell me, why is it, what's the drive for you around keeping it simple?
So in my experience, both in my own professional life, but also with observing others and helping thousands of other professionals, I have found that in order for us to work at our productive best, it is so important that we keep things simple. And I know that we've had phrases like less is more for such a long time. But in today's day and age, with so many distractions, with so many technology interruptions, I think it's more important than ever. And something that you may hear me say at a conference or in one of my workshops is that the easiest thing that you and I can do is to make something more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, it's just so simple. It's just so easy to add one more suggestion, one more idea, one more thing to the to-do list, one more thing to our schedule. But as a result, we tend to rob ourselves from our ability to work at our productive best. So as the name Simpletivity suggests, my goal is to help people to focus on what's most important so that they can accomplish their goals, accomplish their dreams, do what they want to accomplish within their careers, and enjoy less stress at the same time.
But isn't there a personal story behind it? Like, were you like crazy complex and you lost something important in your life? Or there's got to be, everybody's got a drive as to why, it's become something really important to them. So I'm wondering if you could dig a little deeper for us.
Well, I think one of the big aha moments for me was when I myself was working in a somewhat traditional corporate environment. For a number of years, I worked for a software and technology company. Roughly 4,000 employees around the globe, and myself working in an office of a few hundred. And what I found is that whenever I would ask someone, "Hey, how's it going? How's your day going? Or how's your week going?" It would seem time and time again, the immediate response was, I'm so busy, Scott. I'm so busy. And it didn't
Right.
matter who I spoke to. It didn't matter what level in the organization. It didn't matter, even if they appeared relatively happy from an exterior or from, from an outside appearance. It was always, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy. And I sort of took that to heart. And sure, I've gone through bouts where I've been swamped with my workload and the commitments and so forth. But I said to myself, there's got to be a better way, right? There's got to be a better way to live this life, and particularly within our professional careers, than just feeling swamped and being busy all of the time. And so that's sort of where I took on the title of busyness killer. That's actually if you need to see a business card, don't worry, I'd be happy to prove it to you. But that's the title that I've chosen for myself, is that I've made it
Awesome.
my goal to relinquish the world of all of this busyness. And also at the same time to clarify that there's a difference between being productive and being busy. I think very often we say to ourselves that we're having a productive day because we're feeling swamped, Well, there's a very big difference between those two things. You can
Right.
be a very busy individual and still not get those important things done. So I hope to clarify that as a part of my messaging and as a part of my teaching.
Absolutely. I know that when I feel overwhelmed and busy, because we all get there. I mean, we're all human, right? I don't care if I'm focused on helping others with productivity. I still have my challenges. And I know my favorite thing to do is to step back and decommit, right? That means to simplify things. So I'm just like, you know what? I've committed to too much and I get to correct that and I get to simplify things. So I'm all with you in and my greatest mentor was all about keeping things simple, and it created so many aha moments for me to step out of the complexity and into the simplicity. So tell us, I know that you're big into technology, right? So does technology make things simple for us?
It can. It depends on how you engage with that
Yes and
technology,
no,
right?
right?
And, so some of the things that I think most of us are facing is that number one, there are so many options out there, right? There are so many different tools. There are so many different apps, apps of the week, apps of the day. And you
Totally.
have friends, you have colleagues, people that you trust who are constantly telling you, oh, you got to check this out. You got to download this. You got to install
Right.
that. And we can often get very tempted by all of this amazing technology. And don't get me wrong, a lot of it is very good, but I think one of the problems that many professionals face is they start jumping from one thing to the next. Maybe there's a bit of a fear of commitment with staying with something for too long because we see the next flashy thing, the exciting
Right.
thing that works with our device and is built for our industry and that type of thing.
Well, I think it's our
Um,
impatience. I just want to jump in there. I don't know that it's our lack of commitment, or maybe impatience means lack of commitment, but we're so like, if there's not an immediate payout, right? If we're not getting that immediate satisfaction and we're not getting results really fast, whether it's a diet or whether it's a piece of technology to be more productive or whatever, we decide it doesn't work, right? Because we're not good at consistency. We want that instant payout.
Absolutely. And I think another thing that affects us is that sometimes we are tempted or drawn to the flashy feature that we don't really need. I mean, it looks amazing. It sounds
Yeah.
amazing. We saw the video or someone else showed us
Right, look at this
on the
chart it
phone.
produces.
But, as you mentioned before about stepping back and getting that higher level view, is this really going to help me? Is it going to help my business? Is it going to help my communication? And sometimes we just start plugging in things or start installing things that are just overcomplicating
Yes.
our world. My background, as I mentioned, is in software development and managing and managing the life cycle of software products. And I always found it very amazing at how some of these large organizations, and we're talking things like governments, states, universities, who take a very long time to go through a number of different applications and go through that RFP process. And even after with all of this research, even with after all of the demonstrations and the testing that they've done, once they've selected a product, in my case, one of our products, it seemed as soon as they had signed on the dotted line, they wanted all these changes to it, right? They wanted
Right,
everything else. It's just like, we've gone through a year and a half
right.
of addressing your needs and what you wanted and how we can solve that and that type of thing. There's always something more. Now that's maybe a separate conversation, in
Yeah,
this world of more, more, more.
yeah.
But yeah, focusing in on the core needs of what you want out of that tool, what's really going to help you, and making sure it can fulfill it on its end.
So what technologies do you feel are really simple to use and simple? Because I think some of them have such a learning curve and such a um, it takes a while, to even implement it and hard to stay consistently using it. So, what are some of the top technologies that you think are simple to use, simple to implement, and are getting uh, simple results?
Well, I think one area that is often overlooked is something as basic as email. Now, it's something we all use, whether you're a Gmail user or an Outlook user. But what I often recommend a number of people to look a closer look at, and you can find a number of examples on the Simpletivity YouTube channel, are add ons or extensions that enhance your email experience. So for example, I use Gmail as my primary email client. And one of my favorite tools is an extension called Boomerang. And Boomerang does a number of different things. It can remind you of emails. It can remind you to follow up. You can snooze an email so it comes back later. We're getting more familiar with snoozing emails. A lot of email clients are now having that built in to the
Yeah.
application. But one of the core features that I love about Boomerang is that just before I send a message, if I'm asking a question to someone or if I'm making a request, I can tell Boomerang, hey, let me know if this person doesn't reply to me within a certain time frame, let's say 2 days. And the great thing is that if that person does reply, well, nothing else happens. I don't get an additional email. I don't get any other clutter in my inbox.
Right.
But if that person does not reply to me, Boomerang does all that work for me. I don't even have to think about it again. I don't have to go to my calendar and set another reminder. I don't have to use a special flag.
Yep.
Boomerang will bring that email back if after 2 days or whatever time frame you set, it'll bring it back to my inbox. And the amount of time, not just the amount of time saved, but the amount of stress that is taken off of my plate
The
is
mind
it.
space, right?
Oh,
Because remember all those things you have to follow up on and the to-do list that you've got to make in order to, so absolutely, that's huge.
Absolutely. So some of those quick wins, some of those easy wins, and another one, which of course you and I just engaged with over the last few weeks, is a meeting scheduler, right? To be able to organize a meeting with either one or multiple people without all of the back and forth of, oh, can you do this? No, I can't. How about this? No, that I'm busy that day. All
I
that back
know
and
it takes
forth. I mean,
forever.
there's so many great tools out there that can ease that meeting organization process.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you're right. You don't think about all the back and forth, but it's considerable. I had one client, and I had an assistant at the time, and I actually, because I use so many online tools, I really don't need a full time person working for me, right? But I did because I had somebody doing those appointments, and the back and forth that took place. Of course, I needed someone because there was all that ridiculous back and forth. Just give somebody access to your calendar; it's so much easier. And
Absolutely.
so what else? I know that that you're also a big Trello fan. Tell us why Trello is one of your tools of choice.
Absolutely. I've been using Trello almost since the very beginning, but I'll admit I didn't fall in love with it immediately. I thought it was an interesting tool,
Okay.
an interesting way of displaying projects and managing tasks and collaborating with others. But it probably wasn't until about a year or two after I was first introduced to Trello that I realized how much more I could do with this tool. And beyond just even my business world, beyond just my professional career, even in my personal life, how it was easy to collaborate with others, plan vacations,
Mhm.
manage family household chores, and a variety of other things as well. And so, what I love about Trello is that it's a relatively simple and it's a very visual interface. Unlike a spreadsheet or many other project lists, which are not much more than a bunch of fields and inputs. Trello is much more visual, which I think a lot of people gravitate towards. It has a very fast learning curve. I mean, people can start using Trello almost out of the box. You don't need to watch a couple of videos. If you want to, by all means, there's plenty out there to help you with it. But it's very quick and easy to set up those projects. And I guess the last thing that I love about Trello, and I hear this from many of my clients as well, is that it's just such a flexible tool. I know that we've all dealt with a project management tool or a task management piece of software where you were sort of locked in to the way that they had set it up. You know, you were going to have to do this next step, or you were going to have to add a due date. It wasn't going to give you that option.
Right.
Trello, you can set it up in so many different ways. That flexibility, I think, is what a lot of people really enjoy about the Trello tool.
Great. That's great. So those are some technology areas for simplifying. What are some other tips and tricks that you give people to help them to, simplify what's on their plate, the way they think about things, or what do you what do you typically bring as your biggest nugget to people?
Well, one really actionable tip that I think your listeners can hopefully take away from our conversation is using some hard limits as a part of our day. And what I mean by a hard limit, you can look at it either from a time perspective in terms of using a timer for a particular task, or email is another great example. I strongly encourage people to set a limit. Say like, okay, I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes in my
Mhm.
inbox, and then I'm going to move on. Then I'm going to get onto something that's
Right.
more valuable or more important as a part of my day. But the other place where I encourage people to think about hard limits are things like the number of tasks that they're going to focus on today, right? I mean, there's just not enough time in our lives to accomplish every single thing that we would like to do, right? We can't accomplish because, our mind is producing far too many ideas and maybes and could do's and should do's than we can keep up with. We have to, we're built around a finite period of time.
Absolutely.
And so I often encourage people to use hard limits like three. Pick the three things that you're going to do before anything else. Maybe the three things you're going to accomplish before you even open up your inbox today. Using limits like that can really help us focus our mind and focus our attention on what deserves our attention today, and what maybe can wait another day or can be deferred, or maybe I need to let that simmer on the back burner a little while longer before I give it the attention that it deserves. But I'm a big fan, whether it's either time limits or even just a number limit of the number of things that you're going to accomplish, that can really help us focus in on what's most valuable.
Absolutely. Just to build on top of that, hard limits in for entrepreneurs who are listening, that we have to set an end of day, because otherwise we don't, and it just bleeds into family time, or is, oh, I should have done that, and it's always like going back into the office. So hard limits and boundaries in a lot of different areas, I think, are really key today, especially with all of the technology that's in our always on. I think those hard limits and different qualifiers are really, really important.
Absolutely. I think we look back at maybe 40 years or 50 years in the past, and we think it's so archaic that people went to work, started their workday at 9 a.m., and then they finished completely, right? They were done at 5, and they never even thought, never even took a second glance at work until the following morning,
Right.
or maybe Monday morning if it was after a weekend. I do believe in many cases we need to at least look at that again, or see how we can incorporate that into our lives. Because I see too many people who just sort of shrug their shoulders or throw their hands up and say, well, work-life balance, I don't know what that is. I'll just, I'll sit here and tread water. I'll try to do the best that I can. But when you can set some hard boundaries in terms of when does my workday finish, and when does time for me, when does time for my family or time for my friends begins, otherwise, one of those two is going to win out, right? Our brains do not segment things terribly well. And if you are mixing, for example, your personal life and your business life in the same inbox account, the same calendar, if you allow your phone to be on at basically all waking hours of the day, chances are your work life, your career is going to win out and have a negative effect on those personal relationships or those family relationships. So I'm not saying that you have to, have a hard stop at 5 p.m. or whatever is
Right.
appropriate to you. But I think it's there's some really good things to learn about from
Yep.
the past, and maybe some of the healthier relationships that some of our previous generations enjoyed. Of course, they didn't have the same technology distractions. They don't have the same things that we are facing today,
Right.
but making sure that we make time for those other important opportunities in our life.
Absolutely. That's why those boundaries become even more important. And I dare say, I mean, the World Health Organization's declared stress a worldwide epidemic. So I don't know that we had that back, before we had cell phones. So there is something to it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what other areas do you look to simplify in your life?
Well, recently I've been paying a great deal of attention on some of the more healthier aspects of my life. And I think what you just mentioned is a great segue to talking a bit about sleep and
Mm,
proper rest.
mm,
Because, whether we call it the rat race, whether we call it the runaround or just our work days, too many of us are applauded for having, spending an all-nighter, right? Or, I only slept 3 hours last night because I had to get the presentation done. And we live in this culture that continues to applaud and sort of champion that type of thinking, that you're sacrificing your sleep, that you're
Right.
sacrificing your rest for the good of the business or the good of the client, or whatever you're championing, whatever your cause happens to be. However, I don't have to I don't have to state the obvious that that's only going to last so long, and that you can only perform at that level for a certain period of
Right.
time before you are going to experience burnout, increased stress, mental fatigue, and
Yeah.
so forth. And just like we were talking about external relationships, but even professional relationships are probably going to deteriorate or struggle if you're not performing at your optimal level. So
Mm.
something that a lot of people are often surprised that I either mention is the importance of taking a nap in the middle of the day. Again, we here in North America, or at least Western society, we tend to have this stigma, that naps are for toddlers or for retirees, right? Everyone else in between, no, you got to stay awake between those 16 or 18 waking hours, however many hours you're awake during the day. But study after study would show that the most accidents occur between the hours of roughly 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. That is not a good time to have a company meeting or a company training or a very important sales call. That most of us are feeling, the heaviness of a lunch or being awake for that many hours somewhere in the early to mid afternoon. Now, I know a lot of people don't have the luxury, of going to a resting
Right.
place or to have a bed to lay down on during the middle of the day. But even if you can find just some quiet time, even if you can find as little as 10 or 15 minutes to either sit in the dark. I've had people who have come back to me and said, Scott, I just go down to the parking lot and sit in my car quietly for a few minutes just to take a breather, just to get away, just to sort of relax and refocus, and how much of an impact that has had on the rest of their day. And of course, we've got a number of other countries who, they've been doing that culturally. They've been including this for many, many years. And I'm not suggesting taking a 2-hour siesta, but again, something as little as 10 minutes, maybe just 20 minutes alone in a quiet place can have a really big impact for the rest of your day.
Absolutely. It's huge. And as a matter of fact, Fortune 500 companies are in mass. Like I understand the statistic is like 70% are implementing wellness programs where they're, having some like meditation, lunchtime, or really helping people to get some of that, uh, mental downtime. And really, it could come back to the boundary thing is, it's time for us to take back our lunch. Like in the context of, it's kind of creeped in industry by industry where people would stay at their desk and work. And I think most people now work at their desk. And if you just had that time to go out to your car, I know people who do that. Like that's what they do is they'll go out and have a 30-minute nap and they feel completely refreshed. And there's actually some cool technology to support that. There's an app called Pizziz that is kind of like a hypnotherapy, like it'll wake you up after 30 minutes. So you can set the timer and you can take this little power nap. I mean, it worked for Edison and Einstein, right? They were huge nappers. So some of the smartest minds of our time were nappers. Maybe we should take something from that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And last year, I believe it was last year, that Daniel Pink published his latest book, When.
Mm.
And there's some great research. There's some great information in there that supports the napping there as well. So yeah, I think it's not easy. When it's something that's been ingrained in our business culture and our professional culture for so long, or it's been frowned upon. It's
Yeah,
not easy to make those changes. But it is great to see a number of companies, especially some larger companies, taking the time and the money to invest in wellness, to invest in proper rest, diet, and exercise.
totally. So if you guys are listening out there, right, and maybe you're at a big company or maybe you're just an entrepreneur and you're trying to keep up, you're not going to find any better way to keep up than to get your rest, and you're going to be in a place of much more creativity. So thank you, Scott. So Scott, how can people reach you so that they can find out more about, I know you've got some great YouTube videos. Where would you like to send them so they can get in contact with you?
Yeah, so the best place to find out more information would be at the Simpletivity website. That's simpletivity.com, Simpletivity. Otherwise, now there's links, of course, on the Simpletivity website to all of my YouTube videos. But if you are interested in learning more about my video content, of course, just doing a quick search for Simpletivity or Scott Friesen will get you there. And almost regardless of what type of tool that you use, I can almost guarantee that there is something that you're going to find valuable there on the Simpletivity YouTube channel. So, yeah, hope to see some of your listeners there, and looking forward to seeing what comes about.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you all for being here, because you know that we make things more complex, and you know that it would totally benefit you to step back and simplify. So take some of the tips that you heard here and just take a moment to think about it, and think about what area could you start with, and look at how could I simplify this in my life? Whatever it is, whatever process, whatever relationship, right? Relationships also flourish better when you keep it simple. So really look at every area of your life, and look at how you can simplify it. I think that there is a lot of value to that. So thank you all for being here. My name is Penny Zinker, and you're listening to Take Back Time, and I'll see you in the next episode.